Good evening. I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome the Superintendent, Mr. McCary, Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Testa, and all of our board, especially our new members. Welcome to VCMS for our board meeting tonight. What we've done the last couple of years whenever we've been here, we've had some of our students come down, do the pledge. We wanted to spice it up a little bit tonight. So we have a few of our students who are in our chorus group, led by Mrs. Tatiana Sevchenko, who will come out and sing our national anthem. I think it's a nice week to do that, so they'll be coming out across the stage. And then if you would welcome them, and, please rise. Thank you very much.
Again, we want to thank the VCMS chorus. I think they do a great job. Thank you very, very much. And we will start this meeting off with the election of officers. So I will turn this over to Mr. McCary to do the election for the chairperson of the board.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. We'll be following board policy number 9121. I'll call for nominations from the floor, then a motion to close nominations, and then by policy, the Vernon Board of Education does a written ballot. And once the written ballot is filled in by the members, it'll be collected and then it'll be put into the record. So at this time, I'd like to call, I'll open the floor for nominations for the chair of the Vernon Board of Education. Mr. Kelly.
I nominate Ann Fisher for chairperson of Vernon Board of Education. Appreciate a second.
Nomination for Ann Fisher as board chair. Is there a second?
Like second.
Second by Mr. Linton. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? I'll entertain a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nominations are closed. We passed out ballots, and I'm going to ask you to fill out your ballots and then hand them forward, please, when you have a chance. So the ballots say I vote to elect and appoint blank as chairperson of the Board of Education on November 9, 2015. I won't read each one, I'll just read the nominee and the name. Ann Fisher by Stephen Linton. Ann Fisher by Mark Kalina. Ann Fisher by Linda Gassay. Ann Fisher by Ann Fisher. Ann Fisher by David Kemp. Ann Fisher by John Kopek. Ann Fisher by Michelle Arn. Ann Fisher by Lori Bajorek. And Ann Fisher by Thomasina Russell. It's unanimous. Ann Fisher is the new board chair of the Vernon Board of Education. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, and we will now take nominations for the vice chair. Does anyone want to make a nomination? Mr. Colino.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Dave Kemp as Vice Chair of the Vernon Board of Education.
Is there a second for that? A second. Mrs. Gassay. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Mrs. Bajorek.
I nominate Michelle Arn.
Is there a second for that motion? Second. Mrs. Russell? Okay, any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, I will call nominations closed. So we have Mr. David Kemp or Mrs. Michelle Arn. Please fill in your ballots and pass them forward. Do I have all the ballots in? Okay. Michelle Arn by Tommy Russell. Michelle Arn, Lori Bajorek. David Kemp, John Kopek. Michelle Arn, Michelle Arn. David Kemp, Linda Gassay. David Kemp, Mark Kalina. David Kemp, David Kemp. David Kemp, Stephen Linton. David Kemp, Ann Fisher. David Kemp is now the vice chair of the Board of Ed. Congratulations. And now we will move on to the nomination for treasurer of the Board of Education. Anyone like to make a nomination for treasurer of the Board of Education? Anyone? We do.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd nominate Mark Kalina, please, for treasurer.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I now call nominations closed. Please fill in your ballots and pass them forward. Mark Kalina, John Kopek. Mark Kalina, Lori Bajorek. Mark Kalina, Michelle Arn. Mark Kalina, Tommy Russell. Mark Kalina, David Kemp. Mark Kalina, Stephen Linton. Mark Kalina, Mark Kalina, Linda Gassay. And Mark Kalina, Ann Fisher. It's unanimous. Mark Kalina is our new treasurer. Congratulations. And our last position is for Secretary of the Board of Education. Do I have any nominations from the floor? This is for Secretary, right? Mr. Kopek?
I'd like to nominate Linda Gassay.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second.
Kemp? Okay. Any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right, I now call nominations closed. Please fill out your ballots. Gesse, Lori Majoric. Linda Gesse, John Kopek. Linda Gesse, Michelle Uring. Linda Gesse, Tommy Russell. Linda Gesse, Steve Linton. Linda Gesse, Mark Kalina. Linda Gesse, Linda Gesse. Linda Gesse, Dave Kemp. And Linda Gesse, Ann Fisher. It's unanimous. Linda is our new secretary. Congratulations. Thank you very much. And our elections are officially done. And we'll move on to item 2.0, presentations and recognitions. 2.1, recognition of Charlie Chatterton, Vernon School District Marathon, taking strides to break the cycle of poverty. Mr. McCary.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. About 10 years ago, Mr. Charlie Chatterton, why don't you please come up, became involved in Break the Cycle of Poverty, a poverty awareness program that uses bikes. Mr. Chatterton expanded that to involve running and has been using marathons to raise awareness. That is how the Vernon Schools Marathon was born. On November 5th, 2015, Mr. Chatterton had run to each of the Vernon schools and ran with their gym classes. While he was there, he discussed the importance of youth fitness and helping those in need. This would be the 7th year of holding the marathon with a goal of 467 miles throughout the day by himself, 27.9, and all the students of the schools combined. The 467 represents the 4.6 million people living at or below the poverty line in the U.S. In the past, the Vernon Public Schools has coordinated a food drive around this time of his run. And I personally had a chance to shake his hand and congratulate him on November 5th at Lake Street School, and it was quite impressive. And there are pictures on our Facebook page to show you everything that he's done with all his classes. So Mr. Chatterton, thank you very much. We have a certificate of appreciation for you here.
Congratulations, Charlie. Thank you for doing this for us.
I just want to thank, obviously, you can't do this by yourself, and I want to thank all the administrators at the different schools, as well as the phys ed teachers, and most importantly, the students that are involved with this, because we couldn't do it without them. And it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite days of the year, and hopefully it's getting us all to think about how we can make a positive difference in our communities. So thank you.
Great.
We'll move on to item 3.0, the consent agenda. Mrs. Arndt,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
is there a second? Mrs. Russell? Does anybody want to pull anything? It's right to see you all. Okay, no, nobody wants to pull anything? All right then, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Mr. Kopek's abstaining. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, move on to item 4.0, Secretary's Report. Opportunity for the Board of Ed to add or delete any agenda items. Does anyone want to add or delete any agenda items tonight? Okay, report from our Rockville High School student representatives. They're not here tonight, so moving right along here. Item 5.0, Community Forum. Opportunity for comments on agenda items, potential future agenda items, or general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Okay, we'll move on to item 6.0, Teaching and Learning. 6.1, Gifted and Talented Presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking, can you hear me? That's Chris. Good evening, and I want to start by thanking you for inviting me to come again. When I gave you my lengthy presentation in April, you said to me, please come back in the fall and give us a wish list, and that's like putting a child in front of a candy store window. So I spent the next few months thinking about what should go on this wish list, and first I started with items, small items, items that would cost, a few $100s or $1,000, and then I thought, well, this is very short-sighted, because our wish list should really be a plan for the next few years. And that changed my mind about what I would put on the list. And I believe that hopefully you've all gotten my list in advance. And I'm just going to go through it, quickly. The first thing that I wish we had was a clear, dedicated budget for gifted and talented. Because right now, the way I work is if I want to have some sort of a program that has to do with math, I go to the math department and I say, hey, do you have $300 so I can go on a field trip? Or do you have $190 for a bus so we can go to Central Connecticut State University? Or can you pay the $78 fee for Math Olympiads? If I want something that has to do with language arts, I go to the language arts teachers and I say, hey, what's in your budget? What's left over that I can use? And that's worked for me, and I've made it work, and I've built connections with those teachers so that we can do that. But it's short-sighted, and it doesn't bring us into the future. So a clear, dedicated budget for gifted and talented is a big item on my wish list, but I think it's necessary, in order for us to move forward. I know some districts have giant budgets. I've been able to do lots of things with small budgets. So anything that comes my way, I will work with to the penny, I promise you. The next thing that will move us forward into the future is better identification tools. We started, my first half year here, we started by using CMT as the first screeners. And then, CMTs went away, and then we had our in-between time with SBACs. And now we have the NWA and the SBACs. And all of those things are good screeners, but we really need to be screening across the board, probably at a younger age. And I would say if you look at the districts that have a very successful gifted and talented program, they start some as early as kindergarten, but really third grade is a good benchmark time where we can give all third graders a specific screener, the LSAT, for example, or another screener that we decide, and that will give us the first point of data that we can then use so that we have students identified as fourth graders and fifth graders. And we're not, we already have that data point that helps us. We can start servicing them much younger if we have that data point. That's not an easy thing to put on a wish list, but it's something that we really need to have in order to move forward. The third thing on my list is a commitment to servicing our students that are identified directly. We have tried doing it with differentiation in the classroom, and that's one strategy that we can use, but that shouldn't be our main strategy, in my opinion. Gifted students, and I believe I've said this at a couple of different presentations to the board, gifted students do need time when you focus just on their needs and their ability level, the way that students that are struggling need that intervention time. And we need to do the same thing for our gifted students. I remember 2 years ago when I came and I spoke about math, and I talked about what a shame it was that we didn't have an accelerated math for sixth graders. And now we do, which is wonderful. So math is just one of those topics where differentiating in a classroom with a lot of different abilities is very difficult for a teacher to address those gifted students. They're just moving much more quickly, and no matter how hard you try, even if you pull them in small groups, they're beyond what everyone else is doing. Just the way you wouldn't be able to maybe help a student who is really struggling, a student who is moving very quickly needs some, direct one-on-one time. A big wish list dream is that we can start pulling students for small group time directly and not just servicing them within the regular classroom. Then that ties into number 4, which is some programming and some pull-out scheduling. That means we're really going to have to work with our schedules, our elementary schedules and our middle school schedule. I'm very happy that at the middle school right now we have a SOAR block in the morning. The middle school has a commitment to improving reading and also the commitment to improving math, but we now have this SOAR block in the morning, where students in every single classroom are spending a lot of time reading. Within that, we're going to be pulling students that are higher level readers to run different book clubs depending on what they want to read. We have a teacher who's already started with 8th grade, and I'm going to do 6th and 7th grade. But we also have an opportunity within that SOAR block on Tuesdays and Thursdays to do other enrichment activities. So over the last 2 years, I've tried more and more to work with these students during the day. When I started, it was all after-school enrichment. You know, they would come to me after school for book club, for math Olympiads, for history day, for any of those things. And my goal has been every year to add more within the school day. Because a lot of times what happens with gifted students is we're giving them more rather than giving them higher or, you know, more at their level. And you know, the kids get tired as well. Most of our gifted students are also involved in 6, 7, or 8 other things, as you saw during the award portion today. So to have them enriched during the day is one of my goals, and that's one of the things on my wish list, which means we'll have to work with, you know, each of the schools to make that happen, to have it become part of the schedule. Here's the big one. I'm hoping, and I would love, and I think it would be a great benefit to us, that we have a second gifted and talented teacher that would help me and work with me at the elementary level. I know that I mentioned in April that we are lacking in our programming at the elementary level. It's really a lot of work for just one person, although I want to do it. So it would be great if in our future, in our long-term plan, we made accommodations for that. And I just sent myself to the Gifted and Talented Conference. I was there for 3 days. And it was amazing to me. I believe I told Mr. McCary this. I was sitting there with folks from Manchester, and they have 6 or 7 gifted and talented teachers. And I was sitting there with New London, and they had 8. And they're like, well, who's here with you from Vernon? And I said, well, it's me. And they're like, it's just you? And I said, yes. I said, but we do have gifted and talented in Vernon. We have made a commitment to it. And they're like, well, don't you get lonely? And I said, well, I don't get lonely at things like this because then we get to exchange ideas. So it would be great to combine with someone else, and I think it would really benefit our kids. If we are screening our 3rd graders, then we know that we can start servicing them in 4th and 5th grade. And as many people as we have to do that is wonderful for me. Gifted and talented is part of the special ed department. And I think if you look at our district, we have lots of special ed teachers that help with the students that really need, some help, that are struggling. But out of all of those staff members, which are necessary and which I appreciate, there's just one of me at the very top, and I would love it if there were two of us. I think we would really collaborate well together. The last thing is a small thing, but I wanted to mention it in here. I'd like to have more collaboration with our area districts, and I've been talking for the last year or 2 about putting together a Minds in Motion event. A Minds in Motion event is like a big fair where students come and they participate in small workshops. And it's a big project for one district, but if I combine with 2 or 3 area districts like South Windsor or Ellington or Coventry or Bolton, we could probably have a really wonderful event. And we put it together in collaboration with the Connecticut Association of the Gifted. So they would come and they would help us. So that's a goal of mine. I would love to have that happen. Plans for this year. I'm going to continue some of the things that I've been doing that have been successful with the students. I'm going to continue to have more pull-out opportunities at VCMS, as many as I can get into the daily schedule. We also have some great after-school opportunities. We now have a writing club, and we are collaborating with the high school. We're going to be publishing an online literary arts magazine. So Winona Chef, who you saw a little while ago, is actually our high school liaison. She is going to start coming tomorrow to our writing club meetings. Vicki Nordland at the high school is getting her students ready to submit. I'm getting our students ready here to submit, and hopefully we'll have a really good quality piece of art and writing all the way from 6th grade to 12th grade, which I think is exciting. I mean, I can't wait. I'm so excited. 2 years ago, I hosted a Gifted and Talented Symposium here in Vernon. I invited 12 different districts to come. I invited a guest speaker, and we got together and did some collaboration. As I said, it's important for those of us in districts where there are only one or two of us to actually collaborate with other people who are doing the same kind of work. And it was very refreshing. It was wonderful. I would like to have that again this year. In fact, people who remember it said to me, hey, are you going to do another one of those? And I said, yes, yes I am. Along that line, I have really great news. The state, after 6 years, has now actually assigned a person to the role of gifted and talented consultant. I made a beeline for him because he happened to give a speech at that conference a few weeks ago. And when I saw him, he began his speech with, hi, I'm Gil, I'm from the state and I'm here to help. And when you hear that, oh my goodness, you can't say that in front of me, because the first thing I did when he was done is I immediately walked up to him and said, hi, I'm Gina, I'm from Vernon and I need your help. So we're very grateful that we now have somebody designated at the state of Connecticut to handle gifted and talented issues, because we haven't had that. When I started working here in Vernon in this position, the first thing I did was call the state of Connecticut, and I was transferred to 6 or 7 different people, and no one could really talk to me about gifted and talented. So the fact that we have that person is going to make good changes, I hope. Is going to, impact the way teachers get training, and it's going to impact some of the programs that we can talk about, and it's going to impact collaboration between districts. And the other thing that I hope it does is that I hope it compiles, Gil compiles a list of the districts in the state that have gifted and talented programs, because I want us to be on that list. That's what I want for us. I want people to look at Vernon and say, hey, the list of the, 50 districts just came out and Vernon is on there. Just like I always want us to be on the map, and I'm glad we're on the map for some of the things that we offer, although I don't think we advertise them enough. I want us to be on the map for really having a gifted and talented program that's moving forward. So, although I initially was thinking I would come here with a grocery list, my wish list is more comprehensive than that, and I think more difficult to fulfill. But we need to move forward, and that's always my goal for this district. As a person who lives in town and as a person who teaches in town, I always just want to see more and more of these kids shine in our district, so that when they go out, people say, hey, Vernon's doing great things. So thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting me again. And I'm happy to come back in the spring and do another very lengthy presentation with a PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Regina?
Mrs. Lee,
Yes, ma'am.
you mentioned testing at the 3rd grade level, and you mentioned the name of the test. Will you just say the name again?
OLSAT.
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 Okay.
There are many. I mean, if you talk to different districts use different tests. But I believe that was one that we used to have in Vernon and no longer do. And there are things that we can go back to that we did well.
Okay. And you also mentioned using SOAR block time.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any downside to that, to the students who would be doing something else?
Well, during SOAR block time, we're mostly reading and using reading strategies. And our higher level students, most of them are already really phenomenal readers. So, and also anything that you do as enrichment is going to involve reading. And even if you're doing a research project, you're actually reading at a higher level. You're probably reading nonfiction. So I don't see a detriment to that. The only tiny detriment might be that the students say, I'd like to read some more, pleasure reading. But I would find that most of these students are doing that already. So I don't see a detriment to that. The other thing we have to be careful is if these students do want to get some extra help on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we have sort of a flex, go for extra help block, we don't want to impede that. We don't want to also take up every single moment of their spare time because, children get tired too, so if they want to have some time for pleasure reading, that's fine. But, in a 6-day cycle, we could see them 4 days and give them 2 days for something else, or we could see them 3 days and give them 3 days for something else. So I think we can work with it. I think the schedule is very workable.
Thank you. Mr. Collegial.
Mrs. Lee, during the course of a given month, how many children do you work with impact throughout the district, just to give us a sense of your scope of your duties?
I guess I'm not too sure about that. I'm not too sure about that number for the simple reason that I see them in many different capacities. For example, Math Olympiads, I have 26 students. So, those students I see on a regular basis, every day 6. Writing club, we have 12 students. They're not all identified, but they're all, gifted writers. So I see those students every week, every Tuesday. Right now I'm working with some teachers at the elementary level. We're trying to program for their students, maybe 2 or 3, one at Skinner and one at Maple Street. Because we don't have a pull-out program, and because I'm not going into the classroom and saying, all right, those 10 of you, you're coming and we're doing a project. Because in the past, our goal has always been differentiation within the classroom. A lot of what I do is giving to teachers of resources, and then they incorporate them into what they do rather than me pulling the students. Does that make sense? So I don't have a very good answer for you. I mean, I can tell you how many students I see for different activities. In 8th grade, we're going to have 200 or so 8th graders participating in History Day. They're not all identified as gifted. We might have 10 or 15 identified as gifted, but I'm going to be working with any of them that want to work with me. Once we change the model of how we program, then I can say to you, on Tuesday I have, 27 gifted students working on math and language arts. On Thursday I have a group of 12. We have about 108 identified in our district right now.
Okay. So actually, considering the amount of people, the number of students you're working with, it doesn't sound like what you're asking for is that extravagant as compared to other districts. So I think, from my perspective, I think we should be putting more effort into this area.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
So we have about 108, but really, if you look at who truly is gifted in our district, as we do a better job identifying, we should have a lot more than those 108. In fact, at VCMS right now, I'm going through the data that came back from the NEWA scores, the MAP testing, because I already see quite a few students that need to be identified but have not been yet. We did have that 2-year lag where we didn't have, our first marker, which is that standardized test. So that 108 very quickly could become 200 and, 250 or even 300. In the population of the world, usually 5 to 10% of people are gifted, and we obviously don't have that percentage identified in Vernon. The other thing that we have to be very careful of is that because we use some teacher recommendation in our identification, I don't want to forget the kids that have some disadvantage in their background that maybe don't always show their giftedness right away. So part of our screening is going to have to include something to, pull in those kids. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Mrs. Arden?
May I ask Mr. McCary a question through you? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Mr. McCary, not at all, so I don't expect a significant answer. But do you have consideration for Mrs. Lee's request for a budget item rather than her begging dollars, but something that would show up as a line item in the budget?
I'm not using this as an excuse, but I've only been on the job 6 weeks, but that's okay.
Understood, okay.
But no, we've already met, and actually we had a very good meeting. And during our meeting, by law, just to go back to Mr. Kalina's question too, by law, we're supposed to identify students in grades K through 12. And if you use the 5 to 10%, that's a good range. Usually in public schools, you want to be around 7 or 8%. We're under-identifying our students. So there's more students out there that we need to reach. It's hard to identify a kindergartner, it really is. The reason we pick grade 3 is neurologically their brains are developed. So that's when you can do IQ testing. So the OLSAT is a group IQ test. That's one phase of the gifted. The talented you would get through the arts and music. So I think the clear budget is a definite, that's going to happen. But I think we can do more, and I think you'll see her back with a more comprehensive program for you to consider. It's just a little too early. We'll give a couple months and we'll get you something.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I know I've heard a lot from parents as well with complaints about feeling that their gifted talent and their gifted students are not being handled, and they're the first ones looking at magnet schools because they feel that they're getting that elsewhere. So we may be able to address our issues with losing students to the other schools if we focused more on gifted and talented.
Anyone else? Mr. Kobeck.
Thank you through the chair to Mrs. Lee. You mentioned a test called NEWA. What's the acronym for that one?
I wish I could tell you the NEWA. It's Northeast, I don't even know, I'm sorry.
And the difference between that and NWEA?
Well, NEWA is NWA,
It
I'm
is.
sorry, it's the
That's
same
what, that's
thing.
what I was getting
I'm
at.
sorry,
'Cause
yes, it
the
is.
letters weren't lining up for me here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, NWA.
So if we're supposed to be identifying kids from kindergarten and up, I know my son is in first grade, he's 6 years old, he just took the NWEA testing in math, and he's very good in math, but 6-year-olds taking a 50-question test, that just doesn't seem appropriate for identifying gifted and talented.
I understand, exactly. And one of the things that I discussed with some of the other teachers in Connecticut, that identify students is that same thing. What do we have that's appropriate to identify as that first marker, that first data point? If you look at the NWEA data from 2005 and 2011 and now 2015, you'll notice that NWEA itself will say, those folks will say, all right, take our 95 percentile. But if you look at their data, their numbers change between 2005 and 2011 and 2015. So if you're saying you need a 212 in math in third grade in 2005, but all of a sudden you need a 215 or 217 in 2015, the numbers are changing depending on how many students take the test. So it's not perfect. And around the state, the teachers who are working in gifted education, they know it's not perfect. But so many states are using it now as a model of showing growth that we feel that there are some numbers there that we can use that show us something. A good data point and not a perfect data point. Anytime you identify a student, you can't just use one number anyway. You're going to look at the data throughout the year. You're going to talk to teachers and get some recommendation. And hopefully you'll use other things. You'll look at the SBAC score. If you're in kindergarten, as Mr. McCary said, it's very hard to identify a student. We have identified students as young as, first and second grade. And we've used some nonverbal tests. We've also used an IQ test. Usually if a parent requests identification at that young grade, we're going to most likely go straight to an IQ test, like the WISC. We now have the WISC-5. So you're right, you have to be very careful in what data you use because you can miss children or misidentify children. So that one data point for your son, although it's very good, we couldn't just use that one number. We would have to look at other things about the child.
Right, and I'm not suggesting anything for my son here, but it just seems to me that 50 questions to ask of a first grader for any level is
Right.
a lot of focus time and not necessarily indicative of whether or not they're gifted or talented at all.
Exactly, and it's hard when they're that young anyway. But it is our district screener. We made a decision as a district to use it along with the SBAC. So because we've made a decision to use some of these screeners as a district, we're hoping to get as much data as we can out of them, and we're hoping to, say, okay, the data is valuable in this instance, or we can find some value in it.
You mentioned differentiation within the classroom. What are your thoughts on leveling?
Wow, that's a loaded question for Vernon. I'll give you the research. Most of the research that comes out of UConn, out of the Center for Gifted and Talented, says that leveling, it says that it's necessary to have gifted students pulled in their own cohort to work at their own level. Now, does that mean that you have to have leveling at every single class and every single topic? Does that mean that gifted students never benefit from being in a mixed classroom? I don't think that's what it says. But it says that for these students who are working at an advanced level, it's very difficult to be in a mixed classroom all the time. Very difficult to meet their needs. So I know that as a district we moved away from leveling, and I know that there were reasons for doing that. I know that we don't want to segregate all of our children so that our children who are always struggling never have a chance to have the role models of children who, are doing better. But I do think that we need some leveling for our gifted students and if we're going to meet their needs. It's probably a roundabout way of answering your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Lee. We appreciate it, and I'm glad you brought it to us before budget time, so we can certainly take this into consideration. And we also really appreciate your enthusiasm for the program, because I think that's one of the biggest thing that has made it so successful is that you're so dedicated to it. We really appreciate that.
I do love the kids. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Great job, thank you.
Okay, our next item is revision learning, item 6.2. Mr. Testa, we have to wait for this machine to warm up, I guess. Takes a few minutes.
Good evening. There's a handout. I hope everyone has a handout. So the display is there, but everything that's on the PowerPoint is in your handout. I just wanted to give you an introduction tonight to Collegial Calibrations, and which really the focus is to enhance our educator effectiveness. Our first slide there speaks to Collegial Calibrations. They're designed really to support our evaluators, our administrators, as they review teacher performance and instructional practice and provide meaningful feedback to teachers. So two things really out of that sentence. Number one, support for our administrative team as we go in and use our teacher evaluation tool into classrooms, and also the importance of feedback and meaningful feedback. You'll hear that a lot in what I discussed with you tonight. Actionable feedback that we're giving to our teachers to improve teacher performance. I highlighted some of the outcomes of Collegial Calibrations. As a result of our work and our partnership with Revision Learning, our administrators will sharpen their observation skills. They'll engage in lesson debrief conversations and we'll learn from each other. We'll refine our capacity to collect and provide evidence-based feedback, and we'll support teachers' professional growth by improving written performance feedback. And my thought is better feedback leads to better teacher performance. I included the next slide. This was our teacher evaluation data from last school year. And you can just take a look and see that there's some variability from school to school. And I look at this as our starting point or our baseline from our work and our partnership with Revision Learning. Collegial calibrations really are grounded in research. I've listed some of the resources that Collegial Calibrations align to, and I'll just share a little bit more information about John Hattie's work regarding visible learning for teachers and the power of feedback. The next slide really speaks to the power of feedback. And that quote, "The most powerful single modification that enhances achievement is feedback." John Hattie refers to the effect size, and you can see on this graphic that 0.4 or 40 hundredths, as it's the hinge point for identifying what is and what is not effective. So you can see feedback falls within 70 hundredths, 80 hundredths, so it really is in that zone of desired effects. In the absence of useful feedback, most teachers' performance plateaus by their third or fourth year in the job. The next slide I wanted to share with you because it really speaks to the amount of support and challenge on teacher development. So if you look in the upper left-hand box for retreat, if we have high challenge and low support, our teachers are going to retreat. If you look on the lower left, if we have low challenge and low support, we're going to have the status quo. To the right, low challenge and high support, confirmation. And the last zone there is really the high challenge and high support, which is growth. We want our teachers, we want to challenge our teachers, but we also want to provide support. Collegial calibrations, if all of our administrators are calibrated on collecting evidence, giving actionable feedback, our teachers are going to be in that growth zone, which we want them to be. Just a little bit about the process. The process starts with a pre-brief conversation. Our administrative team, we divided into 3 groups. Next week, we're starting our first Collegial Calibrations at Center Road School. So there's 6 administrators in the group with 2 facilitators from Vision Learning. We met with them today, with our 2 facilitators today. This afternoon I met with them. And we start our day with a pre-brief meeting. Then we conduct a series of observations. So the day looks similar to after our pre-brief, which is about an hour long, and I have a few slides you'll see. We visit one classroom for a 30-minute block, come back, and we have dialogue about what we saw. We go out, we visit another classroom, we do the same process, and then when we visit the 3rd classroom, we don't come back and debrief. Our administrative team enters the data as if they were writing up a teacher evaluation report, and they enter it right into this reflect system. And then, as facilitators, we give our administrative team feedback based on the feedback they're giving teachers. Okay? So there's a continuum. So it's really a cycle of learning. So our facilitators will start that first. They'll be giving feedback to all of us based on what we're seeing in the classroom. And then once I'm trained, and we have an administrative team that's trained, I'll be doing the same thing. So this system is a partnership for the next 2 years, but we're going to own it. So it's like a train-the-trainers model. After 2 years, I guess I'll step back for a second. In September, I attended a training with Mr. Mago, Mrs. Trindali, and Mrs. Pavlish from Center Road School. So our goal is to learn the process this year, take more of an active role next year, and then we'll be able to do all the training in-house. And I spoke a little bit about the agenda, and that just as a visual of the agenda, what a typical day would look like regarding the collegial calibrations. I've included just a few slides facilitating discussion. The next slide here is just promoting active engagement. So after we go and we observe a classroom, we'll come back, we'll debrief. This is part of the debrief process. And responding to needs. Again, part of the debrief process that we go through. So each evaluator will identify, first on sticky notes, some of the evidence they collect, and then we look for trends and we organize the evidence on that whiteboard. You can see an example of that. Those are our 2 facilitators that will be working with us throughout the year. And then if you have any other questions or want any other information, and then I'll open it up for questions. But the goal of this is really professional learning for our administrative team around the teacher evaluation process. That's really the big idea here, that as a team, we're going in, we're doing some observations together, and as a result, we'll be calibrated, we'll be giving better feedback to our teachers, and as I said earlier, better feedback leads to better performance from our teachers. I'll open it up for questions.
In general, the term feedback is a little bit broad, and I'm confused what feedback is and what evaluation is. And I think the terms are used a little loosely by everyone, really. And I'm not sure when you're referring to feedback, what exactly is going to happen. For instance, when someone is receiving feedback, I would think it would be in writing, okay?
Correct.
As opposed to verbal, but it's not clear to me which they're receiving. What you said was they're getting feedback. So there's two flavors of feedback. And then the second question with regarding that is, how long from the point at which someone is observed do they in fact receive that feedback? Is it 2 days? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? What in general is the timeline for an employee to receiving feedback?
Part of our teacher evaluation piece is that written feedback. If we do a formal observation, part of that is our evaluators give written feedback. An informal observation most times is also written feedback. It can be a conversation also with a teacher. However, in this instance, if we're doing a formal observation, we're giving specific feedback, and it's based on the rubric that the state of Connecticut provides us, which defines teaching. So we use that rubric, we look for evidence in the classroom, we tie it directly to that rubric, and then we give that feedback based on that evidence, and as we move teachers from the developing to proficient to exemplary. So we're using, it's a system that we're learning not only how to observe the classroom, how to collect evidence, and how to give specific feedback, written feedback, that's actionable. So not just the feedback of great lesson, Mr. Kemp, but what's actionable feedback that will move that teacher and move their practice. That's what makes this system, this partnership with revision learning, a little bit different from the past.
But I'd like to follow up with my point about timing. It's still not clear to me, after the point at which someone is observed, in what time frame should they normally expect to receive that written response from the evaluator or observer?
In our teacher evaluation, it's within 5 days. So I would say even before that, so the first few days. Our administrators are going to go back. Part of that process during the day is they finish their day with actually typing up and writing up their observation into the system. And we'll give them feedback based on the feedback they're giving, but that feedback will be available the next day.
I have another question.
Can I just ask for a little bit of history on this? This is the first I'm hearing of revision learning. Where did it come from? How did we end up with it? Are we paying for this?
I've worked with revision learning for the last 4 years. We did it in a previous district. Actually, there's many districts that do it. One of the best parts is if we all looked at a video for 10 minutes, all 9 of us, 10 of us, and we all rated it A through F. And if we had no rubric or no rounding, we would probably rate it A through F. And as you can see from the data points in the slides, we have too much variance. We need more consistency. So what this allows us to do is to make sure that the feedback and what we're all seeing the same thing. And that's where this is important and it comes in. It is costing us money. I don't have the dollar amount in front of us, but we feel it's money well spent because if we don't change it, we're going to have variance scores like we did last year. And it's not beneficial for students or their learning to have that much of a variance.
So I assume then that you found this to be an effective program, you've been happy with it in the past, so that's why.
Very, very happy with it. Actually, I've got to give credit to the previous district because we held, over the summer, we had orientation, basically getting the trainer, and Mr. Testa was trained for free by the other district, don't tell him that. But it was, they didn't mind if they knew about it, but it's a good thing to happen, and we need to calibrate. By law, we have to calibrate our administrators every year. So most districts, what they're doing, putting up a video, calibrate it, see what's going on. But that's not doing it well. This is doing it well, actually going into the classroom, get a group of people, and see what it's all about. I think this is going to be a major lever point for us for years to come.
Mr. Testa, so there are 6 administrators who are working with the 2 evaluators.
There's 3 groups, yes, there'll be
Okay.
6 in each group.
Okay. And the idea is you'll be trained and then you will train others and eventually it'll be used across the system.
Yes.
Okay. The 4th slide, the teacher evaluation data, to me begs the question, then I can't hang my hat on those numbers on proficient and exemplary because the evaluation process has been flawed. Is that?
I don't know if I would say flawed.
Well,
I would say that from building to building, administrator to administrator, there's some variance. That's what it tells us. So that's why when we looked, when I collected this data and I started my new position, one of the first things I did was I looked at it. And that just confirmed that there's variability. Everybody sees different things, and I'm going to be honest, I went to the training in the summertime, I changed the way I collect data as a result of that training. Certain things, certain biases that I didn't even realize I had, how I collected data. Did I draw a map of the school, of the classroom? Who answered? Did girls answer? Did boys answer? I think the training we had 3 years ago, it was just about compliance. And that's not the administrator's fault. That's what the state was offering. And it was all about compliance. So I think I can only speak to myself. I felt rushed to get in there and just go through and collect data. Now I'm drawing a map of the classroom. I'm looking at who's answering more, or who's being called upon. So there's a whole nother level. And it's really taking our baseline understanding of the evaluation process and pushing it up 2 or 3 levels, quite honestly. And that's my opinion of what I went through this summer. It's work.
So it would be correct, based on your answer, for me to deduce that these numbers aren't appropriate. These percentages of below standard and developing and proficient are not, because the same evaluation system hasn't been used. So eventually these numbers will be corrected and more accurate.
I think they're correct based on the level of training that we received.
But you said that it was all over the place. The measures weren't the same. So that...
And comparing the level that the state training that they provide to this level of training, there is a big difference. So it is different. And I think I can best categorize it by, we learned the basics, nuts and bolts of it through the state model. This model, as I shared, takes it to a whole other level of how you're collecting it. And it really focuses on feedback. Before, as I shared, before it was just about compliance. The focus here is about the type of feedback we're giving teachers that will move them from developing to proficient, and it's based on evidence. So it's just not my opinion on anything, it's based on evidence. And that's very clear in that training and the facilitators. If our administrators are just basing it on what they feel, when I give them the feedback, it's going to be very clear. Because there's a continuum that we rate them, basically. I'm scoring them based on the type of feedback they're giving teachers. So it comes out on the type of feedback that we're giving to our teachers.
But I think I'm understanding you that these evaluation percentages will change and be more something we can hang our hats on after you've completed the 2 years and you have administrators trained and they'll all be using the same tool, so that we won't have that variation from school A to school
I anticipate the numbers to look different.
Thank you, okay. And the only other comment I have is to me, the thing I heard that I like the most is actionable feedback. It's one thing to put stuff on paper, but you're talking about giving classroom teachers feedback that they can actually put to use in their classroom. That's where it will make the difference.
Exactly. Part of the process is you make a claim. So, Mrs. Arn, blah, 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 as evidenced by. So there's nothing I can say without tying it to evidence. If I don't have the evidence, I can't make that claim. So it's that claim, connect, action. That's kind of like the process that you learn. That's what stuck with me the most, quite honestly, because it just made it so much clearer to me. Here's your claim based on this as evidenced by, and then this is your next step. This is an actionable, here's your actionable feedback to get you to the next level. So.
And I would wonder, I shouldn't say, why we have such percentages in proficient and exemplary, yet we're not producing like we'd like to produce. So my guess is that this evaluation system is going to make that difference.
I think all the administrators, when we shared with them, were welcome to this, and we're looking forward to this process.
Mrs. Gesson.
I think this tool is very impressive. And my question is, and I understand that we have the facilitators for 2 years. And so my question is, when will the administrators become proficient? Everybody will be speaking the same language. When do you expect that to happen?
That's difficult to tell. I know that our facilitators will guide us through that first session. So we have, basically how it works is, we'll have each group, our administrators are broken into 3 groups. We're going to go through this process. Each group will do it 3 times. So our facilitators will take the lead next week, but I don't like to let them take the lead too much because I want to jump in. So I'm going to jump in with Mr. Mago the second round. So as teachers, as administrators, they'll know where they stand, exactly where they stand every time we do this process. And the more we do it, I anticipate it that our administrators will be more comfortable with the process and be able to be more proficient in even giving that type of actual feedback. So I don't know, it'll be interesting. I'd love to come back, throughout the course of the year and maybe at the end of the year to share kind of where we are.
So what is the frequency then that the administrators will have the opportunity?
Every administrator will go through this process 3 times this year.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up? So will you say that they're completely trained by the end of this year in this process?
I can only speak to other districts. Some districts took 3 years. Other districts took 2 years plus, I think.
I'm sorry, through the chair, to your question. I think we're going to see measurable improvement in the first year, but for them to get proficient, it's going to take 2 years. That's what we've seen through other districts and where we go. So 2 years is a better answer. We're starting it now, which is good, but, and you'll see improvement, back to Mrs. Arn's question, you'll see changes in those numbers, but it's really the next year where you'll be proficient.
Mr. Flynn.
Through the chair to Mr. McCary. Since you have a few years' experience with this, what safeguards are in place that once people are fully trained, people do move on, people go to different districts and so on, and you have to retrain people, and we won't have facilitators in place. What safeguards are in place to maintain the fidelity that you're looking to achieve?
Through you, Madam Chair, and that's a great question. Right now, as it stands right now, if we got a new administrator into Vernon, we would have to send them either to CREC or EastCon to get trained by the state system. We don't want that, because the state system was all scripted, which was a joke. Everybody just sat down there and scripted. You didn't look up, you didn't see what happened. This system allows us to train the trainers. So Mr. Testa has already been trained to train other administrators. So if we get another administrator in, he can train them. But what we've done is we're gonna do this right. So we're gonna get the 4 people he mentioned, they're gonna become trainers of other administrators. And as we become proficient after year 2, we'll probably do it a 3rd year and have all the administrators trained to be other administrators to give feedback. And as people come in, we'll just put them into the cycle. So we'll create our own capacity for administrative feedback on what we want to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Kemp.
Could we look at slide 4? It's on the top slide on page 2. The percentage totals of the 2 columns on the right total as follows: 98%, 100, 90, 86, 93, 90, 100, and 96% of all staff are proficient or exemplary. Conversely, in the far left-hand column, absolutely nobody is below standard. Now, in 350 people, let's say, it is mathematically impossible for 0 people to be below standard. I don't care if you're talking cooks, bottle washers, army, generals, teachers, any kind of group of people. You are not going to have 0 people below standard. And that's part of the issue here. We're starting from a presumption that nobody is in that category. And it seems like everybody is in category 3 or 4. In fact, the percentages of only in developing, let's say, are 2, 0, 9, 10, 13, 7, 13, and 0, and 3. So it seems that very few people are targets for movement out of developing into proficient, because of course nobody is below standard. And that's just hard to accept as a layperson. I'm not a professional educator, but I can't look at a graph of people and where they fall in these kinds of generalizations of capability and accept the fact that nobody is below standard. And we're going to spend 2 years to move these few percentages of people developing into where we have 98 and 100% of everybody, whether it's 50-50, 60-40. Everybody's okay already. And nobody isn't, you see? That's what this says to me. So, if we started to more stringently evaluate our staff, whether it's teaching, nurses, administrators, somebody would end up in that far left-hand category. And the question then becomes, how much work is it going to take to get them out of it? And it raises the question, are evaluators not evaluating them in that left-hand column because of the work involved in movement out of there? That's just as I see this. It's hard to really absorb the credibility of this chart.
But isn't that what Mr. Testa said, that these numbers will be different after
Well, they'll
the
be different in the
administrators
sense,
are-
well, yes, to a point. I mean, I think what he meant was from proficient to exemplary, and that there's this spread between 50-50 and...
No, they will be different.
You expect to see people down, in the below standard category at all?
I think one of the reasons, and again, I can only project, the below standard, if we have teachers performing the below standard, they're not going to be renewed. I mean, we had a number of teachers this year that non-tenured were in developing, and we just did not renew them. So part of those numbers that look like zeros, there's other factors that I think influence those numbers. At face value, just looking at a 0%. Our teacher evaluation system, if you're a tenured teacher and you are on appraisal, if you're not proficient or better, you're subject for dismissal, and that's if any one category developing. So some of those numbers look like, yes, there's nobody in that below standard level. However, if I shared with you the number of students that we non-renewed, or the number of teachers, there are teachers that we non-renewed.
Well, then why weren't they displayed in the below?
Because maybe they were proficient, maybe they were developing as a tenured teacher, and they were non-renewed.
All right. Well, that's it, my piece.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Mr. Kobeck.
Thank you. Through the chair to whomever can answer this question. Early on in the Alliance funding, I thought that we were hiring teacher coaches to teach the observers to help the teachers. So what does that compare to what we're doing now, and are we doing both?
Our instructional coaches teach with all teachers. I mean, they go to buildings, they work with all teachers. They aren't assigned as, well, I'm a developing teacher, now I need to be fixed by an instructional coach. And we did that purposely because they're teachers, they're under the same contract. And if I'm a teacher that needs assistance, the instructional coach isn't necessarily going to fix that teacher. That's the responsibility of the administrator to work with that. There may be a piece that an instructional coach can support a teacher. However, it's got to be a two-way relationship. So we want to match up the instructional coach with teachers that are open to being worked with, and otherwise it's not going to be effective. So that's kind of some of the things that we've learned over the course. It has to be a relationship where the teachers are willing to work with the coaches, and for the majority of the time they are, but it can't be, I need development, so I'm going to work. Some of our best teachers seek out work with our instructional coaches. So we want to make sure we reach all of our teachers.
I had thought that the original plan for the teacher coaches was that they weren't working directly with the teachers, they were working with the observers and the administrators. But now it's...
No, they've always worked with teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs. Arndt?
Mr. Testa, so this revision is going to end up providing us with building principals who are truly instructional leaders and will make that difference in their building.
Exactly.
That's how, okay. Thanks.
And it will be consistent across the district too? That's
Yes.
the hope, right? Anybody else have anything else? Thank you very much. And
Thank
good
you.
luck with that. We'd love to hear how that goes.
Sure.
Let us know how it's going. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.0. 7.1, a report from the athletic director, Dr. Cassell. Give the board an updated report.
Okay. Okay, I'll start back here. Well, thank you, folks. First, it gives me a great pleasure to announce that the girls volleyball team has advanced to the second round of the state tournament. Thanks so much. I also want to take the chance to thank the ad hoc athletic committee for the work that they did in reviewing all the facilities needs that we have. I think they did a great service to the town and bringing it to their attention. With respect to Lois's report, the board has her report in their hand. I'd say a couple things. The very first parent meeting I went to here at Rockville when I started in 2015 was at a parent meeting in August with a group of very dissatisfied parents, dissatisfied with the direction of Rockville High School athletics. That was with Dr. Conway at the high school. At that time, Lois was just appointed as the athletic director. In my almost 2 years and 2 months here, we'll be entering our fourth structure for the athletic director's position. The first year, thank you. Thank you. The first year was in a stipended position. Last year was a half-time school administrator. We started this year with a full-time school administrator, and that's, of course, about to change as Dr. Cassell transitions to her new position. Throughout all that turmoil, Lois, I think, has really maintained our ship's course, if you will, despite all the stormy weather. We've certainly taken some self-induced green waves over the bow, so to speak, but I think those successes that we've had have been primarily due to Lois's efforts. I'm personally very happy with the direction she's taking us and the job she's done. I've asked her to point out a few highlights and then to answer your questions.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I was given 8 questions, statements to address, so I try to do that as much as I can in the paperwork that I gave you. Some of it really didn't lend itself to actually writing down, but I certainly can discuss some of the other items if you have questions specifically in that area too. Your second page is some of the marketing and fostering growth areas I put on one, and I'll just point out a few things that we've really tried to do. My main focus really has been trying to hire high-quality coaches across the board for all of our programs. We've made some real good progress. We still have a ways to go, but we've made some real good hires that have improved a lot of our programs. And it's really then been about trying to make the students feel better about being Rockville High School athletes. So on that list, I'll just highlight a few things that we've done that I think have really paid some dividends. We just, at the 8th grade open house, we've always presented at the 8th grade open house, but this was the first year that I asked an athlete from every one of our sports to wear their jersey and come, and they sat all around in a big area. They were around kind of in a horseshoe. And they had a great time kind of bantering back and forth and trying to get the 8th graders fighting over, which teams they were going to join when they get to the high school. And so it was just a really nice evening. It was great that all those kids volunteered to come out and help me with that. So that was terrific. We do have an all-sports banquet every season now. And that has been, I started that the very first year, the very first season I got there. And it is just a terrific time. We're just about to have our fall one in a couple weeks for this season. And it's just a tremendous time for all the teams to come together and to celebrate each other. And the kids really enjoy it, and it's just a real positive evening for us. Last month, I just started putting out a monthly newsletter to the parents. One thing I know that they've been concerned about is just kind of the level of communication from the athletic department, so I tried to address that by starting putting out a newsletter, and I'll continue to put that out on a monthly basis. I'm trying to do some more things actually in the high school. Just a small thing that we started this year, but it's been a neat thing is I'm working with the activity-based learning program. I have a sign out in front of the school where I for the day, put whatever athletic events we have. And so now the students from that program come down, they ask me what we have. I give them the letters, they go and they put up the sign for me, so they're really tickled about doing that. Another, I think, real positive thing is I'm really trying to get the coaches to be more vested in our programs and our students. We had a head coaches meeting in August, and we talked about some real key things that I think are critical to moving our program forward. I just posed some key questions to them. One was, why did they coach? And I was hoping really that it wasn't for the money. That wasn't the first thing they were going to say to me, but I wanted them to think about why they are coaching for us and why it's important to them. Secondly, why should a student want to be an athlete at Rockville High School? And what are the things in terms of those lifelong benefits of athletics that we really are trying to get our students to be involved with? And then third, what are the obstacles to more kids participating? And there's some common things that really came across all the programs, and so we brainstormed ways we can address some of those things. So those are just a few things we've done, but we're trying to put in more and more every year to try to build up our programs and get, again, the students higher quality coaches and get the students feeling better about being a part of our athletic programs. If you have any questions, again, about any of the things that I provided you or other questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Mr. Lynn.
I'd like to compliment you on, I guess about 2 months ago, you had a volunteer cleanup day. And remember all the things we talked about last year, that there was no storage space and we need more containers, more sheds, however we wanted to phrase it. So it's amazing all the real estate you found once you just cleaned everything up.
No, it's fantastic. So we're trying every season to, when we started just this fall, just have a volunteer work day, and we did do it, and it was tremendous. We cleaned out all the exterior sheds, and Mr. Linton's right. Now we have storage for all our mats, for all our lacrosse goals. We can fit them in there, so it was terrific. We got rid of a lot of things we didn't need, and that was just part of what we did. We painted the sheds in Rockville blue. We did some things like that students are really proud of.
So do you see that going into the future, having volunteer work
Yes,
like quarterly or
yes,
seasonally?
we hope to do it every season.
Excellent. Thank you for doing all that hard work just to get us where we should be and moving forward to the person whoever's going to get the baton passed on to. So thank you for all your hard work.
You're welcome.
Basically the headache you had. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Dixon. Through the chair. Lois, could you elaborate on why students don't get more involved? You just mentioned that with athletics.
Well,
What are some of those issues?
Some of the issues I think are, again, interestingly enough, I met with Paula Plant, who runs the youth organization down in Rockville and one of the teen centers down there. We talked a lot about just kids not participating because they either are having trouble getting their physicals done, or they don't have rides back and forth to the school, or they have to work instead of participating. So we looked at it from that aspect. Are we reaching all the kids from the different socioeconomic areas? And then we've also talked about, and I'm going to be blatantly honest with you, we have had, because we haven't had a tremendous amount of success across our teams, we've developed somewhat of a culture of losing there, and we really are trying to look at hard what we can do to prepare our athletes better and get them feeling better about being an athlete there, being prouder to be on the team. So those are a couple of the things that we've done. Again, we're trying to take a look at each, the way I tackle it is each program, girls volleyball, boys basketball, every single one, and try to look at what does that program need. Is it a coaching change? Is it equipment? Is it, the uniforms? What, for each one of those programs, is the critical piece to making it more successful?
It would seem like some of those obstacles could be remedied, the transportation issues, completing the forms.
Right.
Those would seem to be easy fixes.
Right, so one thing I did is I'm providing her with all of the forms that are necessary for the kids to try out. I'm bringing her now the physical forms, the permission form, the two other forms that are required for students to fill out. So she's going to have a supply down there, and she's going to encourage the kids to fill out the forms. And then I told her if she can get them to the tryouts, then I'll make sure that I help with coordination if they need a ride home or whatever. We have kids going to different parts throughout the town. We'll try to work on that if we're aware of the issues.
So then, are you seeing more students participating as
I
a
just
result
met
of
with her this fall, so I'm hoping, for the winter season, we'll see if it's helped or not.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Kalina.
Following on to that, as a follow-up, I know we have school clinics. Is there any ability to be able to use those to facilitate the physicals for the students?
Yes, and that's another area that we're really trying to push the kids. If they come to us or if they're expressing to us they're having difficulty, we're trying to funnel them down now that we do have a school-based health clinic, and we've had a number of kids for the fall access that. So I'm hoping that'll help in that area as well. That's when we looked at putting those in the school. That time I was the principal of Maple Street, and so when we were talking about what other school, I know the head of nursing at that time said to me she estimated that there could be between 50 and 100 students not accessing maybe interscholastic sports because of the physical. So it seemed like that was a nice fit and could help with that.
Mrs. Art?
Which sports charge admission?
So we charge admission for our evening basketball games and for our nighttime soccer and lacrosse games. And football, obviously. Not football, the big one, football, yeah.
So basketball, night soccer, football, and lacrosse.
Correct. When we play on the stadium field at night.
I don't, in all of the financials, I didn't see any kind of income or reporting of those numbers. Is that available?
Yes, I can do that. We keep track for every game what we take in. That goes into the activity account. The ticket sales goes into that, but I can run numbers for you and keep track of all that for every season.
I'd appreciate it, but I don't know if that's something that the board would like. I wouldn't ask you to do it for me unless the board is interested in seeing that information.
Yes.
Yes, we'd like to see.
Can you tell me how that money is spent? If it's raised by football, is it spent on football?
Not necessarily. We use it for across the programs. I can give you some concrete examples. We might use it for bigger equipment items that we have trouble maybe supporting fully through the budget. So for instance, I just bought the football team a new 5-man blocking sled. Ours was in very poor condition, so I needed to use some funds from the activity account for that. When I see that there's individual teams that might have a particular need, our girls cross country and indoor and outdoor track does not have a booster club. They didn't have proper sweats to wear to the meets. So that was something I invested some money from the ticket sales into. We bought a shooting machine for the basketball program. The boys coach really thought that was an important instructional tool that the basketball program needed. Those kinds of things. So we look at the programs that they have requests, and again, it goes beyond maybe what we can afford through the line items in the budget, and then I'll look to use those kinds of things. Other things that we bought the paint for the paint the sheds blue out of those accounts. So it's a variety of things. But my goal when I got there was to make sure that we're putting all that money back into the students and back into programs and things that are directly affect them.
And can you update us on the status of Unified Boosters?
At this point in time, I know they'd like to have more members than they do, but they do have a fully functioning group, and they're trying to bring all of our teams, many of our teams, not all of our teams, still do have individual booster clubs, but they're trying to get them at least all to the table and to think as a group what maybe bigger projects they could tackle or work on together. So things, for instance, that they have thought of maybe raising some funds to make some improvements to the weight and conditioning room. And again, that's something that they might work on collectively as a group. So they're still in their early stages, but they're again trying to bring more of the individual clubs on board and trying to think about how they can collectively work on some of the bigger issues that we're facing.
So it's no longer in the planning stages. They've done what they need to do, and there is a unified booster. But there's still other booster clubs functioning.
Yes.
Everybody hasn't wrapped their heads around it yet.
Right. I think what their funding looks like now is they're going to have again a general fund, but then all the clubs that wanted to retain their own booster clubs do have kind of line items within that. So it was important to the football boosters and the girls softball boosters that they still had some autonomy, and we're still raising some funds just for their programs. We're trying to get them to think more in terms of the whole athletic program as a whole, and how they can collectively put their heads together and their funds together.
Good luck with that.
I know it's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
But there is, the needs are addressed for the athletes, whether there's an active booster club or not.
Absolutely, and that was one of the first things I said to Mr. Rocket. For those teams that did not have a powerful, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but active booster club, I was going to make sure that those kids were treated as well and provided for as well as any other athlete. Some parents started to say, well, there's tier 1, tier 2 type sports. Absolutely not. I don't care if you're on a team that has 5 participants or 50. You're going to get from me the same thing. That's why at the all-season banquets, every senior athlete now from me, from the athletic department, gets a framed action photo, and I say a few words about each senior before they come up to get that. It was important to me that at least every senior athlete was getting some gift, and before that was even happening. So I'm really working to plug those holes for those teams that don't maybe have more active parent groups.
And we deal in terms of 5-year plans or for improvements that we make. Do you have such a plan for equipment replacement or uniforms in particular?
Yes, absolutely. So I can send you that chart as well if you want it, but I have it all charted out. Basically, it took me a while to figure out where everybody was based on there's files I've been looking through. But I know when the last time we bought each BCMS and the high school uniforms and who's in line for the next uniforms. And so I'm planning. So when I need to go for football, obviously I need a lot bigger chunk of money than track. So I have that planned out so I know when I can project I'll have enough funds to tackle football and raise the cross and some of those bigger sports that have bigger uniform needs.
I'd appreciate seeing the plan, but again, it goes back to whether my fellow board members want to see it or not. I wouldn't have you do it for me.
You mean uniform replacement?
The plan replacement plan.
Okay.
And it seems that students have opportunities, I don't know if that's the right word either, but they're doing an awful lot of their own purchasing as well. Warm-ups, jackets, sweatshirts. Is that part of your plan, or is that an additional? Where I'm going, Dr. Purcell, is students who don't have that same financial capability versus those who do. Is that a consideration?
Right, so I would certainly like it to be, and again, those are battles that I'm fighting. So what the warm-ups that are the school, bought from the school, again, we're providing to everybody. But in addition to that, almost every team does do spirit wear, and I'm not going to pretend that some kids aren't more capable of paying for that than others. Although I've consistently said to the coaches, if they let me know that, I will certainly try to support those kids who need things. One thing I'm looking at is we do have a uniform contract, and it's been through Nike, and we need to think about whether we are going to sign up with them again. That has ended, and we're looking at a different, whether we want to go with them again. But one thing, I met with our Nike representative, and actually Scott Smith, some of you might know him. He's a parent, but he also works at Eastern Connecticut. And Billings Sports is their Nike rep, and they are ours as well. So I asked Scott to come to the meeting as well, because he does a lot of equipment and ordering for Eastern as well. And so we've talked with our Nike rep about what kinds of, if we went through them for all the spirit wear, and could we get better deals doing that, and some of the spirit wear items at an even better cost. And he's saying he can present some plans for me where that will be better. So I'm hoping we can keep the cost down for all the students. One concrete example is because I work, the Girls Booster Club for soccer came to me and said they wanted new warm-ups for their team. And so what I did for them is I hooked them up through Billings again, through our Nike rep. They got a tremendous deal on the soccer warm-ups for their team at a much better cost than they would have gotten if they had just gone out and gotten them in a high-quality product. So I'm looking to do that. If I can get everybody, with Mr. Rocket's support, we're hoping the whole school will get on board with that. And so all of our spirit wear might be done through Billings, and then we're all going to get better prices for those things. But to go back to your original question, if any coach comes to me and said, these two students couldn't buy it, absolutely, I take care of that. And again, that would be something I'd use the activity fund money for.
Final question, what's the status of the concussion training?
So the concussion, we have, the coaches had to go through an education, and all our coaches before they start their seasons have to sign off that they've gone through concussion education training with me. All the ADs went through a presentation, so then I go through the presentation with the coaches, and I have to make sure they've signed off on all of that. All the students and the parents get a form home that they need to read and sign off on, both the student and the athlete, saying that again, they've read this and they've been educated on the symptoms. In addition, we are ensuring that all of our athletes, before each season, go through the impact testing too, the concussion impact testing. So we might not make, if a girl played soccer and then is playing basketball, we wouldn't necessarily, unless there was an injury, have them retake it. But every athlete, before they start their first season, will do baseline concussion testing with our athletic trainer. And it's debatable in the research whether that is useful or not, but I figure it can't hurt. And So we're making sure that if a student does have some type of head injury and the doctor asks for that information, we're able to provide that to them.
Do you have to be qualified to train the coaches, or is it just an awareness, that's it?
Well, the other piece of it, though, in order to get your coaching certificate, you have to do through the CIAC website, you have to complete concussion training. And so that you can't get certified to coach either as a temporary emergency coaching certificate or the 5-year certificate without completing that concussion education course. I just went through it again myself, and so it's a pretty comprehensive course. It takes you about an hour and a half to go through it. So all those pieces, I think, prepare our coaches pretty well.
Thank you. Mrs. Bajura?
Hi, Dr. Purcell. My question is, I'm wondering what kind of communication and coordination you have with the youth sport leagues in town, because you have a lot of kids now who are participating at the elementary levels, and what do you do to coordinate, once they get to the middle school and high school? It seems from what I've seen so far that sometimes it's like starting over, that there's no continuance from the youth program to the coaches at the schools.
So we try to, and that's another goal of mine, to continue to make strides in that area, but we've tried to do things to, I've had meetings with the Vernon Lacrosse Association, for instance, so they kept me very apprised of their numbers, both on the boys and girls side, so I know what's coming up, and so I knew when we were ready to make a move to add a girls team, for instance. I met with the baseball folks when they were going to merge Vernon and Rockville Little Leagues together and talk with them about how we make sure that our coach is getting down there and participating. Our football coach is here tonight, and he does a tremendous job getting down to the Vipers practices and interacting with the kids. He just ran a clinic on our stadium field and I think he had about...
We had about 60, I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
So I could hear you. We just did a camp with the Vernon Vipers, and we had about 65 kids there. It was a good time for us to be able to hand out information on how we do things in our program and meet with the parents, and just, I try to stay connected with them as much as possible. I think it's really important for the coaches to connect, not so much the AD, but she supports us and really wants us to make sure that we're connecting with the programs.
Our boys basketball coach ran mini camp, 3-day camp, high quality over the summer. We had a lot of boys participating. Our girls basketball program we're trying to revitalize. I hope we get more girls involved. It's been a struggle for us to get that straightened out. But, again, I just had another conversation with our girls volleyball coach about what we might be able to tie in more to like the intramurals at the middle school level, so the girls are coming up with a little more volleyball experience. I talked to our wrestling coach again about what are the things we can do at the youth level, at the middle school level, maybe as intramurals to kind of bring those sports along too. You'll find in Vernon, and I know from coaching all the way through in the youth leagues, some of our programs have very good feeder systems and some do not. And so I'm looking at ways we can plug those holes for those programs that don't have the feeder systems.
But you at least are encouraging your coaches to
Yes, absolutely.
reach out to
Yes,
the
it's
youth
important.
programs.
One thing, AJ can tell me, and he does a tremendous job with it, but I'm telling my coaches, this is a year-long commitment. I need you to think about what you're doing in the preseason, what you're doing during the season, what you're doing in the off-season to build the program and prepare our athletes. And that's what I'm really focusing on with our coaches. I don't want them just walking in the first day of tryouts and, we've got to think bigger about this.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Gilman?
Specifically the hockey program and the cost associated with that for the coaching and the ice time. Could you share with us who is contributing to the $9,485 for the head coach? Is that our expense, or is that a piece of, is that a total cost of other towns? Or the same general question with ice time, please.
Yes, so in the past, we are in a hockey co-op. We've been in a hockey co-op for a long time. And our hockey co-op, if you don't know, is Bolton, Connecticut, and Rockville right And so in previous years, this Board of Education, and you are one of the few Board of Educations, did support. You paid for the head coach's salary, the total head coach's salary, and you paid for the majority of the ice time, and some other things as well. And so I know the board made the decision last year to cut that pretty significantly. So at this point in time, you know, my message to those other schools, and I started this message last year, so just even though we had money in there, I started to say to them, we need to divide this pie more evenly among the 4 schools. And so they weren't particularly happy with me saying that, but that was important to me. So again, this year it is going to be divided more evenly. So once we know how many boys we have from, total at the tryouts, and we're just going to determine a per player cost, and then our funds will, contribute toward that. But we are going to look for those other schools to be contributing even more at this point in time.
Well, it begs the question, is it up to us, or is it up to the provider of the ice time to bill the users appropriately?
This is the bottom line. I am, or Rockville is, the lead in this co-op, and we have been. So ultimately, I'm responsible. And even last year, it was a struggle at times for me. I needed to be on the Bolton AD and the Coventry and the Ram ADs to get those funds to the ring. So, but I end up holding the bag because Rockville is the lead school in the co-op. It's just that I have to make sure I stay on them and make them aware of when they've got to send in their payments. And it's, it's just something I have to be aware of and make sure I get done.
So I take it that there's some kind of responsibility being a lead, quote unquote, financially? Well, you're using the term a lead, so
in every co-op, there is a lead school. It's just identified as whichever school is taking the lead. Rockville has, in past years, we have funded more than the other schools. I'm just going to be honest with you about that. But when you decided to cut the funding, and I understand totally why, then, again, it's going to be much more of a shared responsibility at this point in time. And so the lead school is responsible for making sure, and the biggest chunk is that the ice time. So I have to make sure, again, that the other schools are paying on time and have gotten the messages out to their players, what the payments are and things of that nature.
well, it was our opinion then, and it probably still is, although it's a new board, that we shouldn't be in a position to have to pay for Coventry kids to play ice hockey without causing ourselves to have so few kids that we can't have a hockey team involvement at all. So I think somewhere in between is the right answer. I'd like to shift gears a little bit to the involvement of Parks and Rec in our facilities. To the extent that they choose to have various sports and activities going on here in all of our buildings is okay in our fields, so long as we have a mutual understanding as to what's going to happen and when and how. And I'd like you to please update us as to what that ongoing relationship is, for better, for worse.
So again, with the gym time, particularly at Rockville High School, I do create the gym schedule for our teams first. And that was a little shift when I took over, but it was important to me that I was the first one creating the gym schedule. So then it goes out to Park and Rec, and then they fill in when our teams aren't scheduled to practice on the weekends and in the evenings as well, once our teams are done. I can honestly tell you that is the area that I feel like I have the most knowledge over and control over, is the Rockville gyms. For the fields, I don't schedule, and I think I've said this to the board before, I don't schedule the fields. So when, Park and Rec schedules another soccer program to use our soccer field, they don't check with me first. What I have done is say to them, I've let them know if our soccer teams, for instance, are going to be practicing on the weekend, I tell them when, because I want to make sure, again, our kids get first dibs on the fields. But other than that, again, they don't go through me to schedule the fields. If that makes sense.
Well, I understand what you said. That doesn't mean it's necessarily a good thing. Certainly there should be, for the benefit of everyone, a coordination of fields and buildings. And I'm not sure exactly how you're going to accomplish that, but it seems to me that there's some work to be done there, both on the board and town side. Because all of that translates into wear and tear of field and equipment. And to what extent is the wear and tear costing us money that they are or aren't helping with? And I have no idea if they do or they don't. Could you help us understand to what extent Parks and Rec pays for certain ongoing maintenance of our fields or buildings?
As in terms of the fields, you know that they care for the fields in terms of cutting. They line the fields for us. They did do some overseeding for us this fall. Concrete examples I can give you, when tennis court nets need to be replaced at Rockville High School, I replace them. When the soccer goal nets need to be replaced, they tell me and I replace them. So I am going to tell you that the tennis courts, for instance, the bulk of the use of those tennis courts is not Rockville High School teams. So, but they do tell me when center straps are missing or nets need to be replaced, and that has been their arrangement, that I replace them.
Well, somewhere the final analysis of fair share, I think, should be arrived at, and I don't have an answer. And I think we need to improve our relationship with Parks and Rec such that what is being done is repaired and what is planned for gets planned for, so that the other party doesn't lose out on an opportunity to lose a field or a building when they wanted to. So I think that's ongoing, wouldn't you? Okay.
I've not met, is it Coach Taddeo?
Yes.
Haven't met you before, but I want to tell you, I've been receiving all of the emails that you send out. I'm part of that group that gets them.
Yep.
And I need to, just for me, thank you so much. You seem to have elevated the bar in football, your expectation of the students academically, socially, in the community. I can't say enough, and if that's apparent in your emails, I can only imagine the example you're setting for those young men privately. So I appreciate very much what you have made, the requirements that you've made apparent.
Thank you. Well, that's been part of Dr. Purcell's plan from the beginning when she hired me last year. Is she's bringing coaches in that will hold the students to higher standards. And when I first met Mr. Rocket, that was the same thing. Rockville had high standards, but mine are even higher, and I'm hoping everybody comes with me, and that's what all the coaches are trying to strive for. The Rockville Rams website that we have is not just for parents, it's for anybody that wants to sign in and get information. I send out usually weekly emails about the program and how we're doing and things like that. So I tell the kids every day, we're about school and football, and those are the only two things I really want them to be thinking about. And we always put school first, so that is where our standards have been. We're building, we're trying to teach character, discipline, and team, and just overall commitment. And I think that's really why Rockville sports were broken, or the culture was broken a few years back. But with Dr. Purcell's leadership and the new coaches she's bringing in, we just need time and just some consistency at the leadership level in order for us to start improving. And I think you're starting to see that over the course of the last couple of seasons. And it's not always about wins. Those are going to start coming, but really the kids are starting to win in the classroom. And last year I had 6 seniors, and it's not easy to win football games with just 6 seniors. But 3 of them, when I got them, were failing every single class that they were taking, and all 3 of them graduated. That's winning. And that's what we're trying to do as a program. I had 30 kids in the football program last year. In the entire program, we had a forfeit the JV and the freshman season. This year we have 47. We were able to have a varsity, and we have what we call a frosh team, which is freshmen and sophomores. If those kids stick it out, which I know that they're going to, we will then be able to be back to being what we should be, a varsity JV and freshman. Time, it takes time and consistency, and that's what we're trying to do. So thank you for noticing.
Well, Coach, I think for the principal and the AD to set the standard is one thing, but you're making it happen, and that's evident. And I just think we need to recognize that about you and your voice.
Anyone else? I have a question about the athletic mission statement. On this page, you have it as proposed. Is this a new mission statement? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
So
what was our old one?
So one thing, I had gone through in 2009, the CIAC did do a program evaluation, so I've been going through it systematically and trying to make some of the changes that they thought were critical. And one thing they said, and I kept reading it, was do the students and the coaches know what the mission statement is, and can they say it? And clearly, not a clue. So when I met with the head coaches, we simplified it. The old one was 48 words long. This one is 32. It has certain key components. So we spent a considerable amount of time writing it. We kept it clear and concise. And I read it to the students for the first time before the fall season. I had all the athletes together. I'm going to do that every season just to pump them up for the season. And we read it to them. They liked it. So we're going to bring it to the unified parent group next and see how they like it. And hopefully, again, it's a shorter, more concise, and now everybody will know kind of the main things that we want to focus on.
And one of the 8 bullets that we had asked you to address was your 5-year vision for our athletic program.
Right. So one thing I had given to Mr. Rocket at the beginning of the year was what my goals were for this year and what I was going to try to tackle. And I know the position has changed a little bit since then, and but I broke it down into, and this is what I would say in terms of the 5-year plan. I think we need to talk about expansion in public relations. I think we need to talk about facilities, equipment, and storage is another area. Coach is another area, and athletes. And I look at it as elementary, middle school, and high school. What are the key things to do across those 3 areas? And so I would just expand upon that. To give you a concrete example, I think I'm looking at the number of sports offerings we have for the boys versus the girls, and we need to offer more for the girls. That's certainly a goal. The next critical program that I would like to add would be a track and field program in the spring at the middle school. Most of the towns around here have that. I did a pilot program, not last year, the year before, and the kids loved it. So that's something I would like to come to you and say, I think if we're going to build our high school cross-country and track and field programs, we need to offer something. And it would just be giving the students in the middle school another positive sport to try in the spring. So that's a key thing that I wanted to look at. Again, trying in terms of the facilities, I know we have bigger things in mind in terms of some changes to the fields and things like that. That's Mr. Linton's area, Mrs. Fisher, they're working on those kinds of things. But from my perspective, again, it was getting those volunteers out there to clean out the storage and to paint the buildings a nice Rockville blue, and we're going to add gold trim on it eventually. Again, those kinds of things that I can really just make positive changes for the students. One of the first things I did when I got there in one of the big main halls, I just painted blue sports figures on the walls. The kids love it. I mean, and I put an inspirational quote up there. And we're looking what now can we do this year to add to a couple more walls to make it more exciting for the students. So I can do those smaller facility things that the kids really love and again, make them feel good about being athletes there. In terms of down the road, if we really want to be forward thinking, I would like to think about getting a strength and conditioning coach in. I think, not full-time, maybe even 2 or 3 days a week to offer, again, off-season training for athletes, but even some in-season training for athletes. I think that would get them that are prepared. Those are kinds of things that I would like to expand our intramural programs, again, at the middle school and the high school. Our tennis program for the girls has been kind of up and down, but if we could get a tennis intramural program going at the middle school and then in the fall at the high school, it might build up that program. So those are things that I would think would be very important. And then in terms of another thing for the 5-year plan, I'd like to do more collaboration in the high school with some of our in-house classes. So for instance, we print a big sports poster every year. I don't know if our classes at the high school couldn't do that for me instead of, shipping that out. Even the photos that I now blow up for the seniors for their senior photos, I want to go down to them and say, hey, can you do this, start taking over this and doing the photos for us. Again, coordinating and having the ABL students do the sign for me. More things that I can get the students involved in the community and supporting athletics, I think would be a big goal for me as well. In terms of the coaches, again, I just need to continue to hire the right coaches, and I haven't made the right choices all the time, and I'm still plugging some holes, and I'm still getting there, but we're making progress, and that's all I can tell you, and it's incredibly important for me. I think I drive the coaches crazy how much I go to their practices and watch them and listen to what they're doing, because I want to make sure they're doing the right things, and our kids are staying in the programs because they're really connected and they have high quality coaches. And then again, in terms of the athletes, just trying to get them pumped up for the season. One thing Rockville did is the Central Connecticut Conference was piloting a Positive Coaching Alliance program, and they needed a school from each of the big regions, North, South, and Central, to host this. And so I volunteered Rockville to host it. So we hosted all soccer captains and their parents for this Positive Coaching Alliance. I want to do more of that. I want Rockville volunteering where we can to do more things in our conference as well, to get our name out there and to people see us in a more positive light as well. So I don't know if that was probably up too long an answer, but those are the things I'm thinking of.
Thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Purcell. Are there any figures yet, projection figures for girls lacrosse?
I think we're going to be up around, I would say 25 students. I think anywhere between 20 and 25. We have, we had 12 to 14 girls. Some didn't come as consistently, but we only had a couple of those girls graduate, so we have a good solid group still there, and we're bringing in a really good solid group of the current 9th graders. So again, I would guess if we don't lose any players, we'll be up around 25 athletes.
Do you have any cost projections for that?
For this year, we're looking at about $12,000. For next year, when it goes into the budget, again, I'm thinking it will be more between probably about $15,000. It depends. Again, some of the things that the costs that I projected ahead in terms of some of the equipment and the uniforms and things like that are things that I was able to find out last year's budget, and this year's budget will keep some of those costs down. We probably won't in the beginning be able to field, for this year it's just going to be a varsity team. It may take us a few years down the road to get a JV and a varsity team, but we'll see how the numbers grow.
The per athlete spending chart that I have here, do you have any figures from any other schools to see how we compare in per athlete spending and costs to other districts?
I don't. I could see if I could get that for you, but I don't right now.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. We appreciate the time you took to put it together, and lots of information for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item 7.2, fiscal year 2016 budget amendment requests. Mr. Picard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the board. Presented to you this evening are 2 budget amendment requests in light of the Finance Committee meeting that we'd like to take action on so we can correct negative balances in these accounts. I'll take them in order as presented. First is a transfer from a salary line item account at Maple Street School to a service line item to pay for the contract that we've executed with YMCA to provide the after-school community school program services. This was approved by the board and executed by administration as planned, and this is a planned transfer to transfer those funds from that one part-time salary account to the service account to maximize our dollars to support this program. The total request for amendment is $35,000. We pay $3,500 per month for 10 months for the YMCA for these services, and we receive the equivalent of 6 staff plus additional enrichment services for the program as compared to the one part-time staff that we had. The second item, and then I'll be happy to answer questions, is also a planned budget amendment request from the contingency account to several line items. This is something that we typically do this time of the year to correct any adjustments from collective bargaining agreements that went into effect before the budget or after the budget was set, and also to address any salary changes from staff changes, whether it's through retirement or other forms of separation from service, and folks are hired at a different level than what was budgeted. So for some of the new board members, 2 years ago, the board has reinstituted the directive to administration that no line item shall be negative, and as a result of that, we institute budget transfers and amendments in a similar fashion in partnership following the town's protocol. And that's something that has worked very well in our favor to maintain us always in the black and gives us much more of a projectability as far as any threats coming our way. So this is something that is planned every year. We do this typically this time of the year to make those course corrections. That's a total amount of $17,535 in the various line items from the contingency account.
I move to approve the budget amendment request as presented.
Is there a second? Mr. Cooley? Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to item 7.3, the school feasibility study update. Mr. McCary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to ask Mr. Picardo to help me along with this. He has an executive summary that he's going to share with everyone. Basically, last week, on November 2nd, representatives from Malone and McLean toured all the schools. I had the opportunity to meet with them and talk to them. We've given them all the enrollment data that they requested, the birth data that they requested, and attached here is an executive summary that Mr. Picardo's put together. And I'm going to ask him to walk us through it, if he doesn't mind.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to the board. As a brief summary and a recap, at this point in time, we are 3 months into a 6-month project, and you'll see that in the update as provided by the vendor. As Mr. McCary had stated, the update before you this evening is more of a process update. There are no recommendations at this point in time. Essentially, where is the vendor in the data collection process, and have they received everything? And so at this point in time, they have received all the data that they've requested from us, from the town, from the stakeholders, from focus group testing, from the State Department of Public Health, the birth data, and so forth. And now they're in the phase of analyzing that data. And the plan is, at a future board meeting, whether it be the one in the November 23rd meeting or the first meeting in December, that they will be prepared to share with us more information, more substance, and specifically as indicated in their update, an existing conditions analysis inclusive of the comprehensive enrollment analysis and facilities and educational programming evaluation findings at this point. So that'll give us more information at that meeting. We will be extending an invitation to Malone and McBroom to provide us with that presentation to the full board at that time. By way of background, especially for the new board members coming into this, this process started, a planning process started in the fall of 2014, and as a result of that process, it was decided that the Vernon Board of Education directed administration to conduct an RFP, request for proposals, through a competitive bid process to hire a consultant to come in and do this feasibility study to look at the future structure of the school system and to look at the various components to make recommendations for change. A bid was posted on December 11th of 2014. It was due on February 11th. On January 7th, we had a very well-attended mandatory pre-bid conference, and then there was the public bid opening on February 11th when the bids were due. We made an award based on best value solution. That's what we follow in our bid process. That takes into account both quality and cost. The costs that we received ranged from $29,950 all the way up to $93,000. We ended up making that decision based on best value with Malone & McBroom at $29,950. Contract was awarded and executed July 21st of this year, and that brings us up to date as far as where we are in the process as far as the data collection goes at this point in time.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Corbett?
Through the chair, Mr. Porcaro, how were the feasibility studies put together? Do you know? I'm not feasibility studies, focus groups. That's what
Through the chair. The vendor, Malone & McBroom, had selected stakeholders based on input from our planning committee, and they brought in various individuals from the town, from the board, from the school district to conduct the focus group test that they've done so far.
Thank you.
I would like to add one thing, if I could. After conversations with the board chair, I think it would be wise if we can bring in Malone and McBroom to give us an update, not only on the feasibility study, but on the athletic fields as well. So since they're both the same vendor, we'll kill two birds with one stone and try to get them for the next board meeting.
All right. Now we'll move on to item 9.0, to review and update the Board of Education calendar. Does anybody have anything to add or delete to the calendar? Okay. Item 10.0, opportunity for questions from the press on the agenda items. Any questions? Okay. I just want to tell you also, I had Trish make copies of the rules of procedure that we agreed upon 2 years ago for the board, and I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to read it over the next 2 weeks and make any suggested changes or whatever, so at our next meeting we can approve whatever we all agree on. I know some of these rules were kind of hard to keep, so we might want to take them all over. But, so if you guys could just take the time to review them and see if you have any suggestions, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, Mr. McCary.
So since this is the first Vernon meeting for the 2015-2017 Vernon Board of Education, this is a small token of our appreciation for the district. It's a textbook. It's Uplifting Leadership by Andy Hargrave. It's a very good book. It's a book that we're going to be giving every board member and every administrator. The quiz is on Friday. Are you ready? But I just want to welcome everybody and thank them for their service and their commitment to the Vernon students. And these books are yours. I'll be passing them on.